As an executive, your time is extremely valuable. And one of the biggest time sinks that you'll experience as an executive is sitting in meetings that could have either been an email or a 20-minute meeting, but a 60-minute meeting because that's the default setting in Outlook. And people just love scheduling hour-long meetings. So how do you solve this as an executive? How do you protect your time? We're going to talk about that today. My name is Tom, and I'm the founder of the Vertical Motion Executive Career Accelerator program, where we help mid-career professionals become executives. If that's interesting to you, then consider booking a call. There's a link down below where you and I can have a one-on-one conversation and determine whether you're actually a fit to take the next step up and if I can help you get there. Also, you can check out this video, which will give you a step-by-step guide of instructions on how you can actually take the step from mid-career professional to executive with or without the support of an executive career coach like me. So check out that video. There's tons of value in it. So with that, let's get back to talking about meetings. So like I said, as an executive, your time is extremely valuable. The organization pays you significant amounts of money in order to be available to do all of the things that you have to do as an executive. Yes, some of that involves being in meetings, but it involves understanding which meetings to be in and which ones to avoid, and how to make the organization more efficient, and how to be available with more resources yourself to make the right decisions at the right times. One of the challenges that I found in being in a company that was extremely meeting intensive, I would be in meetings from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 12 hours. I was literally like eating on camera because I was in Zoom calls for 12 hours. It was frustrating. But being in that environment, I found that I had something called context fatigue. And what this was, I would be talking about a topic that was a very high level topic, and it was, strategy 5 years out, and then instant context shift because that 60-minute meeting ended, and then I went into another 60-minute meeting, and in that one we were talking about some minute detail on some specific program about a specific issue. So I was going from zoomed out to zoomed in, and we were having these hour-long conversations over and over and over and over again. And by the end of the day, not only was I not able to get any of my actual work done other than just helping other people on different teams accomplish their jobs, but more importantly, I was exhausted mentally. And so by the end of the day, the meetings that I was in towards the end of the day, I had so much context fatigue and decision fatigue, and like just being on for all that time, it was exhausting to me. And I don't think I was my best version of myself as an executive in those later meetings. And usually I would do my best to just check out, skip, or avoid, especially the more regularly scheduled meetings that were just more status updates anyway, because I was just exhausted. You want to avoid these kinds of situations as an executive. There's a better way to run meetings. And this is what I do now. And this is what I encourage all of my clients who become executives themselves. Set these rules in place when you start at a new organization as an executive, so that people learn very quickly this is the only way that they can get your time, and they want to be respectful of your time as you work together. So there are typically 4 types of meetings that you'll experience as an executive. 3 of them are productive meetings, and one of them is just social gatherings. The first type of meeting that you're going to encounter is a meeting where there's an exchange of information. And these are typically your status update meetings, where somebody gets up and talks about, here's the report of this week for these things, and they're reporting it in a way that they're adding context to the report. So it's not just like you're looking at a spreadsheet together, but the person is presenting the information and they're presenting it with context. Other people ask questions, add value. You make decisions on like action items to go forward and so forth. But it's typically that kind of exchange of information that's best handled in a group where everyone comes together synchronously and shares that information together. The second type of meeting that's super valuable is one where you generate ideas. And so this is like a brainstorming session where as a group you come together and you consider a new opportunity or how to solve a challenging problem. You sit together as a group and work through this. And typically, even though these meetings are typically only scheduled for 60 minutes, they're probably meetings that need to be longer. A good brainstorming session could take as long as 2 hours. It could take a whole day, in fact. But typically, you actually want these sessions to be longer than the standard 60-minute session. And the third productive meeting that's super valuable is a meeting where a decision is made. So there's a problem, there's a challenge, there's some sort of inflection point or decision point that's come up. Somebody presents, here's A, here's B, or here's 1, 2, 3. The group gets together, they talk about it, and they make a decision and they move forward. And finally, every other meeting is basically a social gathering. If you're not exchanging information, if you're not generating ideas or making a decision, then the purpose of every other meeting is basically a social gathering, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's great to have people come together and connect, and that's fine. But just understand that that's not an effective meeting, that's a social meeting. And so just understand the difference between the two. 3 effective types of meetings and 1 not necessarily effective, but could be if you think about it in terms of culture. Now, the tool that I like to use in order to make sure that meetings are actually productive and they're necessary and that everybody understands what they're getting into when they go into that conference room or into that Zoom call, the tool that I like to use is the agenda. Typically what happens is people will just grab an hour on Outlook that everyone has available and they'll say meeting or they'll say discuss thing, and that's it. And they add people, they add a resource like the conference room, they add a Zoom link, and that's all you know. And so when you get to that day of the week, you look at your calendar and it's like, it just says meeting or it says this or that, right? No, don't do that. Here's what you want to do. Instead, you want to train your team to actually become very hygienic about the agenda in a meeting. And so what you want is you want very descriptive agendas in the meeting invite. Otherwise, you won't accept the meeting. So for example, with the first meeting type, which is an exchange of information, your agenda should be painfully explicit about what information is being exchanged, who's presenting the information, who's listening and gathering and understanding the information, and then finally, that presenter, whoever that is, should be the facilitator of that meeting. And so that should be the person who actually owns the meeting calendar item, and they should be the one that stands up and controls the meeting so that they get their information out. In this agenda, you're very explicit about what information, who's giving the information, who's receiving the information, making sure that the presenter is the person who actually runs the meeting. In the second type of meeting where you're generating ideas, it's the brainstorming type of meeting, you want to be very explicit about what the goal is. What specific problem are you trying to solve? Because otherwise this becomes just like a navel gazing session where you all kind of float off and start pondering like, what if, No, you're there to solve a specific problem. You're there to come up with ideas around a specific topic. And so make sure that in the agenda, it is painfully explicit what you are trying to brainstorm ideas for and what the goal of that session will be. I want 5 ideas. We want the best idea. Whatever that is, you want to make sure that in those meetings, you have a goal. Also, you want to time box this meeting. And so what I mean by that is that these meetings can be actually a little bit longer than your typical 60-minute meeting. In a 2-hour session, you might have a phase where there's a lot of information sharing and then a lot of ideation. And then there's a section where you choose the best ideas and then set up action items afterwards. And so you want to have this very clear agenda across this meeting. And this type of meeting, a facilitator is absolutely mandatory. It's usually best that the facilitator is the subject matter expert or the product lead, the program manager, the head of development, whatever. But it's somebody who will take responsibility for actually flowing through the meeting, but also take responsibility for following up on the action items that come out of this type of meeting and go and do the research on all of the ideas that were collected and then bring the group back together. And so in the third type of productive meeting, which is the decision-making meeting, in this meeting, in this agenda for this meeting, you want to share the decision that needs to be made in the agenda. Today, we will discuss whether or not we're going to move into this new building. In today's meeting, we're going to discuss whether we should hire candidate Y. You want to be very explicit in the agenda of the meeting what decision needs to be made. Also, it's imperative that you have the presenter share the information. Their presentation should be shared in the agenda ahead of the meeting. Some people will push back on this, like, well, I don't want to give you the presentation in an email. I want to give it to you in person so we can all talk about it. Well, then my question to that person would be are you afraid that this meeting should be an email? Because maybe it should be an email and not a meeting. And that's how I would think about this. So if somebody is giving you pushback on like, I don't want to put my presentation into the agenda, it's because they know that this meeting probably could just be an email. We could all solve this over email and save ourselves 60 minutes of time, but that's not what they want. They want the FaceTime in front of the group so they can stand in front of a presentation and talk, because some people just really love doing that. Understand the pushback when people say they don't want to put their presentation of information into the agenda. It's because they probably want to stand in front of a group of people and talk to them. Also, I've noticed throughout my career that Most decision meetings take about 20 minutes, but then we spend 40 minutes just basically repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And so what's really happening here is, again, we're expanding the meeting to the time allocated, which is typically 60 minutes. And it's 60 minutes because that's what Outlook likes to schedule meetings as a default. Instead, time box the meeting to 20 minutes. And so that they have to get through the information very quickly. Also, require people to have read the information that was in the agenda ahead of showing up to the meeting so that the meeting can start immediately by saying, let's talk about it, briefly recap, it's this. My recommendation is this. I'd like to hear, thoughts from the rest of the group. You get into those thoughts very quickly. Either consensus is formed very quickly or there's obvious pushback by some people, and then the conversation will need to take a little bit of time. And so in that case, you're not going to make a decision in that meeting, or you're not going to make an effective one. And so at that point, you want to call the meeting. So either way, whether you come to a decision or not, a decision meeting should take about 20 minutes or so. So that's how meetings should work for executives. And so it's really important that you take control of meetings that you're invited to, right? With peers and seniors, as well as your subordinates. You want to start to try to build this hygiene because it's going to save you a ton of time and energy as you go through your career. And I'm going to leave you with a couple tips as well on ways that you can be more protective of your time as an executive. Don't let people just grab your time. Hey, can I grab you for an hour? Don't let people just throw calendar items on your calendar. You're gonna be on a Monday and you're gonna see you have meetings all day Monday and Tuesday, and there's hardly any meetings on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? As you go, it's like this wave, right? So as Tuesday shows up, Wednesday's fully booked. As Wednesday shows up, Thursday's fully booked, and so forth. And so people will just be grabbing your time because you show availability on Outlook. Require that you have to accept. If you don't accept the invite, the meeting doesn't happen, or you're not going to attend. One way you can do this is you can go through a system like Calendly, where it's like an external system that lets people book your time, but you only allow certain types of meetings to be booked at certain times of the day. So for example, I like to do a lot of task work in the morning where I'm doing a lot of logic stuff and I'm kind of in deep work mode. But then in the afternoon, as I get fatigued from the detailed stuff, that's where I want to be more social and be on phone calls. So I have time for work stuff in the morning, and then I have time for calls in the afternoon or meetings in the afternoon. I don't allow someone to just grab any point in my calendar. They only can grab certain times of day and certain days where I'm actually mentally ready and available for that type of meeting. So you can set up some rules like that for yourself inside of Calendly. There's some ways to do it inside of Outlook that are beyond me. Generally speaking, you want to let people know like you're available for certain types of meetings at certain times of days and certain days of the week. The other thing that you can do is you can employ like a virtual assistant or a VA, or if you're a big dog, you can have an admin who schedules your calendar for you, but this admin is working with you to make sure that they're scheduling the right kinds of meetings for you at the right times of days. And again, make sure that you are requiring people to be painfully explicit in their agenda. If they're not, if someone just throws, an item on your calendar, it's like 10-minute sync or, weekly sync up, then decline it. So I'm not going to attend this meeting because I don't know what it's about. I don't have the context. I'm not going to be prepared for it. So I'm not going to waste my time. And so make sure that you are forcing people into this meeting hygiene. So I hope this discussion about meetings was helpful to you. As you employ these things, it's going to take your team time to get used to these rules. So call out the infractions, but kind of gently at first, and let people slowly ease into this new way of thinking about meetings. So just be a little bit gentle as you employ this in your team, but it will save you so much time and mental energy. You'll be so grateful. And I think your team will as well. If you like more content like this, let me know, tell me, what I can talk about, leave a comment below and let me know what's important to you, what I can talk about with you. So with that, that's all I got today. I will see you in the next video. Take care.